as you prepared for this sort of section in Matthew 7, what are some things that really caught your attention, even before you preached last week?
Well, I know that this passage, Matthew 7, 1 through 6, is one of the most misunderstood, misapplied, misused texts in all the Bible, because it appears to give a command: don't ever judge any other person. Well, that fits beautifully in our cultural day today, where people say, I'm my own. None of your business what I do. Don't tell me what I should do. So judge not, or you're going to be judged. And it's easy to hold up this text as a shield, say I'm beyond any evaluation or any assessment from anybody else. And that's not exactly what Jesus is saying there. So as we're going in, how do you relate this text that Jesus is teaching to what's going on in our world?
What are some texts in the scriptures that tell us to judge?
Well, Sermon on the Mount. So you get to the Sermon on the Mount, and the very opening verses of chapter 5, Sermon on the Mount is 5, 6, and 7 of Matthew. And verse 20, Jesus says, "For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven." Well, in order to make sure that I enter the kingdom of heaven, I've got to assess, what are the Pharisees and the scribes? What's the moral teaching of the day versus what does Jesus say? And all through the Sermon on the Mount, he says, you've heard it said, this is what everybody's saying in the world, but I say to you. You've heard it said, but I say to you. Well, that requires a judgment. Am I going to listen to what the world's saying? Am I going to listen to what Jesus is saying? And again, he says, you hypocrites, don't be like the Pharisees. Don't be like this. Be like this. So again and again, and then chapter 7, verse 15, he says, beware of the false prophets. So How do you beware? Well, you have to be discerning. You have to make a judgment. You have to make a decision. Am I listening to this or listening to that? So it's not as if we don't make judgments, but what he's condemning there in chapter 7 is a really fault-finding kind of judgment that comes from a sense of superiority and pride, that I'm holier than you, and I will tell you what, and as if I know everything there is to know about you, your circumstances, every detail, your motives, and that's why I make a judgment about you. That's the kind of judgment that Jesus is condemning there.
Yeah, so he uses a great illustration that has been talked about a lot, but speck and a plank.
Yep.
What are the differences, and why use sort of that sort of word picture to explain judgment?
I think it's funny. It's just funny. A speck is actually not a grain of dust. It's like a twig is what it means, a little sprig of wood. So it's not insignificant. It's a deal. You have a twig in your eye, but I have a massive log, a 2x4, a plank in my own eye. And that was just his colorful, beautiful teaching of an illustration that we tend to see people's faults, but never our own. And we all have these blind spots.
Yeah.
I said I haven't seen my blind spots yet, but I've heard most people have them.
Yeah, it reminds me of the famous seminary professor says, I know I'm wrong in some of my theology, however, I don't know where it is.
Yeah, that's right. We don't know.
Yeah.
But Jesus' teaching is you need to really look at yourself, and you need to be sure that you're not judging someone else with a great sense of superiority and a lack of awareness of what's going on in your own life.
Yeah, how do you get that awareness?
Well, you have other people in your life, who are helping you. You have the Holy Spirit, and I think what's being condemned here is this sense of superiority. So when Jesus says, by the same measure you will be judged, underscores that when Jesus says, judge not, or you'll be judged, for with the same measure that you judge, it'll be measured out to you. I think what he's underscoring is we are all going to be judged, and we're going to be judged by God, who actually does know everything about us. He knows our motives. He knows the circumstance. He knows all the details, and he's going to bring that kind of judgment to us.
Right.
And you're not God. So don't judge in the way that you're going to be judged. You're going to be judged by somebody who knows everything, and frankly, you don't know everything. So be careful about the way in which you judge someone.
Yeah.
And when you look at somebody else's faults, you just have a tendency to not see what's going on in your own life. First, remove that. So I think before you weigh in on somebody else in a critical way, you just have to say, Lord, search my heart. What's going on in me? Is this a right time for me to weigh in and tell somebody how wrong they are?
Yeah, I sort of think of the old adage of walk a mile in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
Sort of as the idea there,
Yeah.
right? Just
Yep.
the understanding of maybe where they're at and what is really the burden that's going on.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. What do you think is sort of as post sermon, what do you think people wrestle with, as they have the conversations with you after church on Sunday and emails and follow up through the week?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's, there's two different kinds of people, I think. There's some people who are sort of, their gift is criticism.
Mm-hmm.
They're good at it.
Right.
They love it. It's their spiritual gift. They want to tell you what's wrong. And, we've all had those people. I've had people like that. I've had a few of them, who just can't wait to get after me about something. And then there's other people who say, who am I? I'm not going to say anything. So we don't say anything. We never take a sense of responsibility to help our brother out because there really might be a speck in his eye. There really might be something that he's struggling with. And, God might be asking you to come alongside and say, hey, can I help you with this? Not judging you. I'm susceptible to the same things. Every temptation is common to man. I see this in your life. I've wrestled with it. Can I walk with you on this way? So I think people are trying to figure out, how do I apply judge not that you may not be judged? Do we just withdraw? No, you really do engage with people, but you have to do it in a self-aware, Holy Spirit guided, humble way. And don't forget that you should be quick to hear, slow to speak.